Good afternoon. It is with deep pleasure that I welcome you all to the National Museum of African American History and Culture. It is so wonderful to see you all out on a Saturday in the afternoon and to watch a film, no less, which always makes me very excited. My name is Dr. LaCharles Ward, and I am the Museum Curator of Photography and Film and the Director of the Center for African American Media Arts here at the museum. There are many things that I love about the work that I do here, but I haven't quite figured out if there's anything that exceeds the joy of sitting in a dark theater watching films about Black life. It creates a portal, even if temporarily, to step outside of the now to inhabit the visual world crafted by the filmmaker. Black independent cinema has served as an avenue for creative expression, cultural affirmation, and introduced new cinematic languages and aesthetic innovations to capture the expansiveness of Black life and culture. From the Black feminist filmmaking that Julie Dash offered us in Daughters of the Dust, to the palpable intimacy of the soft blue hues of Barry Jenkins's Moonlight, to the Black minimalism and poetic demand that we sit with and linger with memories that Raven Jackson's in her film All Dirt Roads Taste of Saw, or to the revelatory use of the subjective camera shooting from the point of view of the protagonist that Ramel Ross gives us in Nickel Boys. Black filmmakers have made and continue to make a profound contribution to the history of cinema. We are all in for a treat tonight. We will get to experience a film by a pioneer of Black independent filmmaking and all of its 4K restoration glory, Jessie Maple's 1981 film, Will. This afternoon's event is a product of mutual love and commitment to the preservation of Black cinema. The restoration of Will was a collaborative effort between the Robert F. Smith Center for Digitization of African American History and the Center for African American Media Arts here at the museum, as well as with the Black Film Center and Archive at Indiana University, which is where Jessie Maple's archive lives on. We will hear from the director of the BFCA, Dr. Devine Lawrence, before we start the film, but I would like to just thank and acknowledge all of those partners who've made bringing this film back to life so that we might see it today and into the future. I would also like to thank CK Ming, who is somewhere behind with likely a microphone headset on their head, giving cues for folks. But CK has been instrumental in making sure that this event happened, all the logistics of organizing a number of people. Additionally, all of the people in the Office of Public Programs, so Leslie Walker, April Richardson, Yolanda Perkins, as well as James, and any number of folks who've been involved in this for your expertise and your time. Keith Madden, who is up there, who's gonna project the film, thank you so much for all that you do and for your brilliance in terms of thinking through how we watch cinema in this space. And to all the other departments whose behind-the-scenes labor makes all of this possible. Join me, please, now in thanking them. And lastly, before we hear from Dr. Lawrence and finally start the film, CK Ming will do a special presentation with the Maple Patton family who are here today. Following the screening, there will be a conversation moderated by Maya Cade featuring E. Danielle Butler, Audrey Snipes, and Raquel Gates. Please join me in first, silencing your phones, and also dimming your screen lights. Thank you, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I am CK Ming, and it's my great honor and privilege as a member of the National Film Preservation Board of the Library of Congress to present this certificate to Audrey Snipes, Daniel Butler, and the larger Maple Patton family that names Jessie Maple's will to the National Film Registry. She received this honor in 2024, and the Library of Congress is so happy to name this seminal film to its registry of over 900 titles that represent the culture of America and its cinematic culture. Thank you. So Carla Hayden sends her congratulations, as well as the chairperson of the National Film Preservation Board, Dr. Jacqueline Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you.
And now it is my pleasure to begin the film. I'm very excited this has finally happened, and I hope you all enjoy Jessie Maple's Will.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Novotny Lawrence, and I'm the director of the Black Film Center and Archive at Indiana University. We are the only repository in the world that is solely devoted to acquiring, preserving, making accessible, and putting on programming around Black film, the diaspora, and from all around the world. It is an absolute pleasure to be speaking to you all tonight, and I apologize for not being there in person. However, I want to thank my partners at the National Museum of African American History and Culture for allowing me to record some special opening remarks for this momentous occasion. I have to say this is really special tonight, what you all are going to see, and so I want to also extend my congratulations to the Jessie Maple Patton family, because she is indeed a legend, a pioneer, and someone whose name we should say as often as we possibly can. She is the first known Black woman to direct an independent film. And when she needed a space to show that movie, she and her husband built a theater in their basement so they could give the film the space and audience that it deserved. It's a story that's ahead of its time, and I'm hoping tonight that you all will see how special this film is and be able to feel Miss Jessie as you celebrate, elevate, and again, further cement her in the pantheon of Black film. She is special, it's a great occasion, and I hope that it goes well. Enjoy the evening, everyone, and congratulations to the Maple family.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. It is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for this conversation, Maya S. Cade. She is a creator and curator of Black Film Archive, a first of its kind digital archive likened to be the definitive history of Black cinema by Slate.com, and the inaugural Connecting Communities Digital Initiative Scholar in Residence at the Library of Congress. Cade is the only person in history to win multiple esteemed Special Critic Awards in the same season, receiving special distinctions by the New York Film Critics Circle, the National Society of Film Critics, and the Alliance of Women Film Journalists. Since Black Film Archive's August 2021 launch, Cade's achievement has been featured in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Times, the Hollywood Reporter, among countless other publications around the world. The award-winning writer and curator is based in Los Angeles. Please welcome Maya S. Cade. Thank you.
Hi. I have the distinct honor of welcoming our panelists in celebration of Miss Jessie Maple Patton. I want to begin with Raquel Gates. Raquel Gates is an associate professor of film and media studies at Columbia University. She's the author of Double Negative, The Black Image and Popular Culture from Duke Press in 2018, and is currently working on her second book titled Hollywood Style and the Invention of Blackness. In 2020, she was named an Academy Film Scholar by the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts, and Sciences. Please welcome Raquel. Next up, we have Audrey Maple Snipes. Audrey Maple Snipes is the daughter of the pioneering filmmaker Jessie Maple Patton. She served as a member of the LJ Film production crew and worked at Maple's Harlem-based independent theater, 20 West. Since the 2023 passing of Jessie Maple, Audrey maintains stewardship of her mother's creative and business legacy. Please welcome Audrey. And last but certainly not least, we have E. Danielle Butler. E. Danielle Butler is a ghostwriter and collaborative storyteller. She started working as pioneering filmmaker Jessie Maple's memoirist in 2018. The role extended into creative companionship and mentoring, with Butler chronicling many of Maple's endeavors. Together, Butler and Maple wrote a book, a screenplay, and documented the frameworks for numerous other projects. Please welcome E. Danielle Butler. Thank you all for being here today, and thank you for this crowd. I want to begin with kind of delving into Jessie Maple's biography. I think, there's a lot of talk about, oh, this person was the first woman to make a film, and this person, but it's kind of some corrective archival work happening here as we, center Jessie Maple and her pioneering achievements. So I want to begin with throwing to the panel, what drove Miss Jessie Maple to consider filmmaking?
It's a tricky question. Because she was in the medical field at first, but she always kind of had this dream of writing and doing things that's happening in the community. And she wanted to share that. So she first transitioned into writing. She had Jessie's Grapevine, which she had with Amsterdam News, which was a Black publication in Harlem. And from there, she went into cinematography. And I'm gonna let Danielle say the rest, because she got the real bird's eye view of my mom's life.
Yes, so that's an excellent question. As Audrey said, she started in medicine and then made the transition into writing. And from there, her journalism career continued to grow, and she found herself in newsrooms as a camera woman, and she became the first Black camera woman in the union. And right about the time that she was finding her stride in that space, television was moving away from film. We were going to television, we were going to videotape, and for her, it was, well, I've already started a new career again, so this idea of starting over again isn't that, so I'm not gonna continue with news. I'll take the opportunity, as Audrey said, to get into community, sharing the stories that I've been writing about, the stories that I've been capturing in news, and taking that opportunity and moving into cinematography, working on her documentaries, and then Will, that you all saw here today.
How gorgeous. And the restoration truly looks beautiful.
Thank y'all for coming. Truly appreciate it, and I hope that y'all enjoyed it.
And it's, so often we hear the story of, oh, where was this film, And as I watched it, and this is my third time watching it, and just the beauty that jumps out on the screen, I really wonder if we can delve into the production of Will and what that production process was like.
It was very interesting. So most of the people in the film were actually family members, and most of them were in-kind services. So my mother comes from a family of 11 brothers and sisters. So she gathered everybody together, and they had to do some part of that film to help. And they were all grateful to do that. So it was really a family project, because the film was based on one of my uncles who was having an issue with drugs at that time. So this was her way of humanizing people that are on drugs, that it's not as simple as people think it is, and these people are human, and they are loved. So that was the basis of the film. And it took quite a while, actually. I think we started in 1978. I think I was in high school, and then she finally got it out and got it out in 1981.
Wow. And Audrey, you play such a significant role in the film. Can you tell us what it was like?
Oh my God. I was coerced into that, to playing that role, because I'm not an actress. Every time I see it, I'm like cringing. But it was fun, because like I said, most of the people in the film were family. So it was fun, but sometimes it's kind of hard seeing myself up there like that. It's such a young age.
I really, as I was mentioning, I'm fascinated by the restoration, and there's this constant focus on the rediscovery. And can you all bring me through what that public rediscovery process has been like, and the unearthing of this film through the restoration process? And I would like to start with Danielle.
So in 2014 to 2016, we saw a discovery, if you will, of people saying, oh my gosh, Jessie Maple, who is this? We should know more. And we had older screenings of the prints. So 2014 to 2016, by the time we roll around to 2018, she's like, oh, this thing is picking up steam. It's about to be something. I'm starting to get more calls about it. I'm starting to have more viewings, and it was it was a second coming of the film through those earlier, again, 2012, 2014, 2016, and the process continued, and by the time we got to 2020, the conversation was really deep in terms of restoring Will and its pioneering sort of its place in history. And so from there, we're here today. Dr. Gates, I know that this is your realm. You're the scholar, and we're here for you.
Yeah, I'm always interested in films that are much delayed but right on time. And it's very interesting to be sitting here, especially this month, because we're watching, the premiere of Will. Charles Burnett, who's a legendary Black independent filmmaker, has a film, The Annihilation of Fish, which was made in '99, which just got a theatrical release last week. Zainabu Irene Davis has a brilliant film called Compensation, also made in '99, got its first theatrical release yesterday. And that's not even to speak of Kathleen Collins and Losing Ground, and I could go on and on and on. And so I just wanted to kind of note that, Will being named to the National Film Preservation Board is huge, and that happened in 2024, but it was suggested in 2009, and it didn't happen then. And it's really interesting to think about the compositions of these boards and who's able to sort of push things through and push them into public, into public view, and that feels like a thing that's about more than just the brilliance of the film, although the film is brilliant, but the different people and structures and institutions that have any kind of ability and power to really bring things to the public.
For sure. And, you know, I think as we're thinking of all these films that have really been reignited lately, of course, this all in this current life is happening post-2020. That's kind of, oh my gosh, what is in the archive? How do I excavate? And I think that there's something that's really special here is the way that the family is integral to the process of this release of this film. And in the films that you named, Charles Burnett, Zunabu, Irene Davis, that they are alive to tell their story, right? And I think it's important as we gather all these people to kind of contextualize what Miss Jessie Maple Patton's role was in Black independent filmmaking. So we briefly have gestured towards the fact that she had a cinema. I'll throw this to anyone on the panel who feels that they want to speak to it, but can we talk about the Harlem cinema and how that, you know, shaped, because we hear so often about LA Rebellion, but there was a Black New York and East Coast independent film scene that I think is really important to elevate while we're here.
Well, 20 West was really created because nobody wanted to showcase her film. She had a hard time trying to get it in theaters because it wasn't this major production, you know, didn't spend millions of dollars trying to produce it or get it done. So she had a brownstone and she decided, well, I'm going to show it. I'm going to make it shown in my basement of my brownstone. I'm going to build a theater. And it really started out as just for showing her film at that time, but then she realized that there were younger up-and-coming writers and producers, and they had no place to show their film. So then she decided that she would help showcase their film, and that's how really 20 West got started. Plus, talk about the Wisconsin and.
Oh yeah. Okay. So I think what's really, Miss Jessie had like such a beautiful sense of humor, and the story that she tells about how we get 20 West is, as Audrey mentioned, she's looking for a place to screen this work because it's taken 3 years, it's doing all the things, and she finally got an art gallery nearby to agree to show the film. But the caveat was that it had to be shown on cleaning night. So she said, okay, sounds good, you know, Leroy and I will come by and check it out. And when she got there on cleaning night, it was all the wires, the dust, like it was cleaning night. And she says, well, I can't really show my film here. My friends like to wear fur. This is going to be like a premiere. There's no way that we're premiering in furs with the mop bucket. And so then she says, Leroy, what are we gonna do? And of course she has this brownstone and we have the space, let's create the space. And what we received as a result of that was a 50-seat theater in their basement in which she took on the works of other independent artists. She knew her journey, she knew the experience that she had, so imagine those coming behind her, imagine those peers coming next to her, and what happens is she creates a network and she says, I'm an independent artist, you know, it costs to make this film, it costs to show this film, we're not really making that much money on these, so she created her own circuit, her own sort of independent film circuit where she would book the film there in Harlem for 20 West. And then she would send them out to Wisconsin and Chicago. She had peers out there that also had spaces. And so she created this network. So not only would your film be screened at one time, you could get your film rented again and again. So you knew that you would have some sort of income coming from that film. And I think it's important to note that some of the films that we have seen that have gotten bigger takes, that they've had that opportunity. Many of those films were shown at 20 West before we got to see them publicly. And 20 West lasted for 11 years. What started to show one film, oh, maybe I'll help somebody else, turned into 11 years of commitment to our work.
And
Sorry.
I just want to say, she also paid the filmmakers to showcase their film because she knew how hard it was. So she did give them, in fact, she would pay them money to be able to show their film, and she would allow them to charge for them to come in to see the film because she knew how important it was to make money off your film as well. And she wanted to give them that opportunity to do so.
I was just going to sort of add in some additional historical context, which is this idea of Black independent filmmakers having to sort of make do in terms of exhibition spaces. I mean, this goes back to the birth of cinema, like in 1898. You know, Oscar Micheaux wasn't showing his films in, you know, mainstream theaters. He had to find places to exhibit things, and that might be like a church banquet hall, it might be in a rec center, something like that. And so what I really love about the story of finding the space to exhibit it is that this connects to a much longer history of Black independent film, which is always, we talk so much about directors, filmmakers, or we talk less about exhibition practices and where can people gather as a community, like we are today, to watch things. And it also strikes me that this is such a this is so 1980s in some way, even though I know the film was filmed later, because, you know, in the 1980s, that's when Reagan, you know, reverts some anti-monopoly laws. And so we get film companies who are now able to own movie theaters. And so the entire sort of theater system that would have showcased independent film is largely gone by the time that this film is released.
And she couldn't get anybody, when she wrote the film, she really, you know, was thinking maybe I can get a bigger production for it. But she couldn't get anybody to help her with it. You know, they kept giving her this, no, I don't think it's going to be right. I don't think it's, the nuance of it is, you know, they didn't want to deal with the drug issues that we're having in Harlem. They didn't want to show that on film. But my mother is the type of person, you can't tell her no. Like she was not here. Well, if you're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it. You know, I'm going to do it myself. And that's how it became with the services of in-kind and family members. And she was able to do it.
That's so beautiful. Thank you all. I think, you know, as you say that, I'm reminded that this film and so many films like it were pigeonholed to an educational film market, where they kind of had a life where it was a problem film, if you will, that kind of, it became, okay, well, we'll show this to students, they'll understand, you know, we'll play this, or roll the cart of the TV in, we'll play this, they'll get whatever lesson they need to get. And so often that's told, that's said in a derogatory fashion, right? That it's, you know, oh, this is an educational film. But Raquel, I really do want to ask you, what is the importance of the educational film market and how we understand films like Will?
Yeah, you know, the entire idea of the educational film as well, I mean, this goes back to the early days of Black filmmaking, too. I mean, when D.W. Griffith makes his, you know, horrifically racist The Birth of a Nation in 1915, HBCUs start recording their own codas to the film, their own, like, correctives, which are then sort of put forth and marketed as educational films. And so the history of this, you know, goes back like 100 years. But I also think the specific moment of the release of this film is so significant because it's in 1980, because this is 81, but in 1980, ABC starts doing their after-school specials, which I'm sure a lot of us grew up watching and being like traumatized by. And those, I mean, they do that for like 17 years or so. And so, you know, when I hear that this was marketed as an educational film, it also feels to me like such an ingenious way of tapping into, you know, this market that isn't designed around promoting Black independent film, but it can become a really, you know, kind of like backdoor way of sort of getting this film out into the public in schools across the country.
And I think so often when we have those films that are geared toward Black audiences, they're not with a Black person at the helm. It's kind of this translation that's happening of, okay, I know that this is an issue in the Black community, I'm going to tape this and, you know, I'll send it out to students. But this being someone who had experienced this from a family member firsthand, with the sensitivity and the lightness that the subject requires, and the heft as well. Just stunning. And I really do want to go back to touching on the fact that Miss Jessie Maple Patton was the first Black union camera woman. And I would love to throw the question to Danielle. What can we learn from her legacy as a Black union camera woman, specifically?
Yeah, I think that Audrey said it best. You can't take no for an answer if there's something that you need and also something that you want that is worth absolute pursuit. In any case, for Jessie Maple working in news, it was important to, I think that you just hit on this really beautifully, Maya, this idea of how we film and categorize Black people. And so from her perspective as a camera woman, she was committed to, specifically in the news space, making sure that Black people couldn't be edited out of the frame for the evening news. Right? And so then she says, well, I see that these jobs are going to other people who are a part of the union. I too need a union card to make sure that I can still work and do this that I am committed to showcasing Black people in such a human way. And there was a fight for her to join the union. She studied, she did all of the things, went to the rental houses, learned all of the camera equipment backwards and forwards, goes to take the test, and the test had been sabotaged. The test had been sabotaged. She was told that she had failed the test on the one machine that she knew with her eyes closed. There's no way. And she had requested that a witness be present for her test at the same time because she kind of had that knowing. And the witness saw somebody tampered with this. So they said, okay, we'll retest you, but it has to happen right now on the spot, on the day that we choose in this moment, no additional prep, ready, set, go. And she passed it in an embarrassing speed. Like, that's monumental. Because she could have gone home and said, I didn't get it. They held me back. It didn't work the way I wanted it to. But she didn't take that no for an answer. And she didn't give them a no, I'm not going to take it. It was a yes, I'm going to take it. I'm going to show you. And so I think that's the broader piece of the legacy. I don't have a place to show my film. I'll find a way to do that. I can't keep working in the newsroom without being a part of the union and getting the things that I need. So I will take this test. I can't, I'm not at the point of writing this next book. Danielle, I'm not going to take no for an answer. You're going to say yes to doing it. And that was the theme. She talked back and never took no.
And I think what's so critical to also add here is that not only did she talk back, she gave a guide for how you can talk back too. Because, of course, after she becomes the first Black woman to be a union camera woman, she writes a book so other people can become union camera people as well.
And she also sued ABC, NBC,
Yes.
and CBS for not giving her the right to be able to shoot news, and she won. So,
But I think that yes, and when we look at that opportunity, the book that we receive as a result, this guide, imagine suing the big networks. I'm certain that it wasn't anything to laugh at, right, in terms of winning the suit, but to make the bold choice and say, in this book, I am going to publish the documents that chronicle this lawsuit experience. I'm going to publicly share all of the directives that happened, and then I'm also going to give you this guidebook. It's prolific. It goes back to that idea of community and taking care of family, because she could have kept it to herself.
And I
she
think
didn't care about being blacklisted. She didn't care anything about that. She cared about her rights. And that's how she did all of her films and everything that she did. It was the right to be able to was important to her, and the right that other people would be able to.
I think, yes. I think as we're talking about this perseverance ethic that she had, it's also important to elevate the love ethic that she had. Because, so much of how we understand her work is through her creative partner and life partner, Leroy Patton, as well, and how that is fundamental to the filmmaking. And of course, you being a part of the film. I would really love if you all could talk about that. How love is a thread throughout the filmmaking process.
Oh yeah, she loved telling stories that she felt needed to be out there. Whatever was going on in her life, she wanted to share it, even from friendships that she's written several things. She wrote a movie about friendships, and anything that was going on in her life, that's what she could relate to, and that's what she wanted to write about. And she didn't want anybody telling her what she couldn't do and what she could not do. She stood true to who she was. It wasn't a big deal for her to make a whole lot of money doing her film or going to California and shooting these top tier movies. That wasn't what it was about for her. It was really about a love story of the stories that happening around her. And she wanted to give a light on it. She wanted to people to see that you can be true and positive to who you are and what you are, and people will embrace it. She didn't know if anybody would embrace Will, would even think about Will. She had no idea that it would be as big as it is now. It was just a love project for her that she wanted to share.
And I think when we talk about that love perspective, we see love even in the film that we've seen today. We see how it happens, right? We see a loving couple. We see Will in a loving light. We see him as a father figure. We see him as a community member. We don't see him as his addiction. We see him as a human that is worth loving, despite all of the pieces. And so when I think about this idea of her loving stories, imagine being able to tell the stories that you love with someone that you love, that can see it, that you can describe the shot, that you can describe what your mind's eye is doing. And I think that's what we see in Will with Leroy Patton behind the camera and as a director of cinematography for all of her films, right? We see that. And the other thread that Audrey has touched on is bringing everybody in, family, right? This is something that's important to me. I'm gonna bring in people that I love to work on this with me. I want to be surrounded by love as I create a work of love.
No, I was just gonna to add to what you just put so beautifully. There's this as much as it's a timely film and of a time and dealing with a really specific issue, it's also so timeless in this idea that love and like pure love is the thing that can make us all better people, And I was thinking about other films that are, sort of have this relationship between an adult and a child, and I was thinking of like Charlie Chaplin's The Kid, but also Moonlight, and these films that show this just really sort of pure love between an adult and a child. And I don't want to project too much, my own reading, but there's something about this that when I watch it, I go that's a mother made this film. Like there's and I was and I said this to you backstage, but there's a 1976 Ebony article about your mother, and it's just talking about her work, and there are all these amazing photos of her, with a camera and looking through the camera and all of that. And there's also this lovely photo of her brushing your hair in the morning, and it's just this perfect encapsulation of the love of craft, but also the love of family, and the ways that those two things work in conjunction. But I also have to imagine we're hard at times to be a working woman in the 1980s who has to balance all of that.
It's kind of bittersweet to me because unfortunately my mother wasn't able to see the restoration because she's passed, and it's been about 2 years, and her birthday was February 14th. But I'm so grateful that I'm able and that I did witness her doing these things so that I can talk about it. So I'm sorry.
I really appreciate that. And just hearing the ways that film is a living archive of memory, of place, of circumstance, and the love that goes into the filmmaking process. And I'm just so grateful. I wanted to know, do you all have anything else you would like to add before we turn it over to the audience?
I love this as an archive of Harlem and New York, and I just say that too. I mean, and you mentioned that it's filmed in your grandmother's apartment. I mean, can you? It's just it's an archive of a time and a place and a people, and I think especially with with gentrification and all of the things that are happening in this moment, I feel really fortunate to be able to step into this world and this time via this film.
Because that was a Harlem that I grew up in. That's what I knew. It's totally different now. But there was a lot of love in Harlem. There was a lot of family. And it was a Black community, you know. And that's what I appreciate about this film, that she was able to showcase that true, authentic Harlem. And she was able to get those shots of those buildings, of the streets, of the people walking up and down and driving, just the community of people living their life.
I'm with Audrey. Today is extremely bittersweet. And I am also with Dr. Gates here on this idea of being able to be transported, but not just from a sterile perspective, but from a communal perspective, from a loving perspective. And to Maya's point, that's one of the threads that goes through each and every one of her works, whether it is a documentary on Black wealth or the documentary on methadone treatment, to this film Will, to Twice as Nice. There is something about seeing Black people with big dreams and real life challenges working through them that she tells and shares in such a beautiful way that I'm grateful to be a part of this full circle moment of this particular film, this moment in history, this moment of rediscovery.
And the strength that she had, the resilience that she had, that I'm not going to let anybody stop me from doing what I want to do. And she was very heavy on positive thinking. She never, anybody even talked to her about negativity or putting any negativity in her project, which they had to go. She stayed totally focused on being positive about making this outcome the outcome that it is.
So grateful to share this time and to share this film with everyone. I want to throw it to the audience. If you have a question, will someone be? Oh, there's a mic. Is there?
Hi, I have a question. I really appreciate you sharing your mom's story with us. She sounds like an amazing woman. I have a question about her transition from medicine to filmmaking. I'm sure, you know, I'm guessing she was a doctor or something like that. No, well, switching over to medicine, such a interesting thing. What did the family think about her making that transition, especially with the struggles that she had in the film industry?
Well, so my mother is the second oldest of 11. So she kind of was the backbone of the family, and they kind of followed her lead of whatever she wanted to do. They knew that she would do it. That if she thought anything was going to happen or if she wanted to change, they supported her. It was all support and love. They never had anything, if that's what Jessie want to do, that's what Jessie's going to do. And they just supported it. I was a little bit younger when she transitioned from the medical field into the film. So I'm going to let you talk to Danielle a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for that, because this gives me a chance to brag on Jessie Maple, like real life superhero magic. So Jessie Maple went to school to become a bacteriologist. She initially wanted another role, but that was reserved for white men. the opportunity to become a bacteriologist was reserved for white women. And y'all know what she wanted, that role. So she embarks on this career in medicine. She is being a bacteriologist. She ends up leading the lab, of course, even though the lab was supposed to be led by someone with a PhD. She ends up in charge. They don't hurry the search for a new supervisor of the lab. And during the time of her leadership, she discovered a bacteria, because why wouldn't she discover a bacteria? And some of the challenges that she faced there was this idea that she was a Black woman in medicine in a role that was typically reserved for white women. During her lunch break, she would go out and picket with the other medical professionals and the others in the area that were working towards equal rights, that wanted their various rights. And the question was, as a lab supervisor in this role, could she be picketing with someone on the lower level? Could she be fighting for their cause? And it was, I mean, it's her lunch break. She's technically off work. So she was doing the work. She was pushing for equal pay for women in the medical field. And then when she had the opportunity, said, this is good. I've done good in this space. I'd like to do something different. I would like to tell stories based on what I'm seeing and I'm observing. And also, I've got a young child at home, so I don't get to not be good at whatever comes next. So when she leaves the lab and goes into writing for the newspaper, we see that shift that I think that Audrey talked about. You knew that she was just gonna do it.
Hi, I have a copy of your mother's book, How to Become a Union Camera Person, that she wrote in 1977. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Charles Burnett gave it to me because I was a filmmaker. I went to Howard University's film school back in the 70s. And one thing that you mentioned, that there was someone watching when she was taking the test to become a camera person. I remember reading it was your dad who watched and saw the person mess up so that she would mess up. I mean, she's incredible. Obviously, a writer as well as a filmmaker. I'd love to get your autograph, too.
No problem.
Thank you.
Well, can't top that. So I'm not going to try. My name is Erica. I'm actually an up-and-coming photographer and filmmaker, and I have questions about, because of the state of African-American history in a current political climate, how do you go about preserving the legacy of the history before us as a filmmaker now for the future of people who would need to have access to that as it's being erased, as it's coming out? And then what tips do you have for people who look like us in this industry now to move forward? I mean, that's a lot. Break it down for me. Break it down for me.
I mean, I would say, I think it's really important, and I think, Maya, you could speak to this as well. It's so important for people to save their stuff. It sounds really basic, but I mean, the vast majority, especially if like silent film, is lost. What we know, the ways that we constitute film history is based partially on what we can access, and then two, what people choose to write and talk about, and in my case, and what we choose to teach. So I don't work in the film industry, but I mean, I would just say whatever you make, you have to save it and deposit it somewhere. I mean, the Black Film Center and Archive at Indiana University, I mean, filmmakers, there's a filmmaker, Bridget Davis, who Maya has worked with. She had the foresight in the 90s to deposit her film, Naked Acts, which did not have theatrical release. She had the foresight to deposit it there so it could be saved and preserved and not sort of disintegrate in a box in somebody's basement. And that creates the possibility for the film to then be rediscovered, re-released, which is what happened this summer, right? As for all the rest of it, I mean, Black folks have been making art for a long time through very dire, political circumstances. And for me, I, with my students at least, I find it really incredibly comforting to actually read about Black filmmaking practices in some of the worst moments of history. I find that really galvanizing, and a reminder that folks have done it well before us under worse circumstances.
I was going to say, if my mom can do a film for almost $2,000 back in the time, you can too. You can take your iPhone. There's nothing that you cannot produce. No, it may not be this $10 million budget. But if it's your project and it's your love, you should do it the best way that you can to get it out there.
And I would add that so often when these questions are posed, and I'm not insinuating this is what you're saying, but so often people are waiting for permission for someone to do what they're already called to do. And I think you have to give yourself that permission to create, because no one can really grant it for you. And I would say that as you're in this act of creation, as Raquel said, that there is a history that can guide you on how how you can navigate this terrain, because the Black film history, simply put, is making a way out of no way. And we really must use the past as a guide to understand all the possibilities of what the future can be.
So really quickly, I would like to just add to that. Dr. Gates hit on this, everyone has hit on this, is being able to go back. Erica, I think that was your question, like, how do we do it? And to Dr. Gates's point, it is save it, but it is also share it, right? It is share it with someone else, share it with a confidant, it is share it with your journal, so that we have these writings available documenting the process, so that we have some sort of way to find our way. We only know because someone wrote it down or someone shared it, they told it. And the Black Film Center and Archive at Indiana University is the largest repository in the world of these Black film stories. We have the ability, I went last year and sat with total magic to be able to just take it. Sometimes you just need to be in the space with it. And you'll know what needs to happen. I saw some extremely creative ways of how we document and how we save those pieces that seems insignificant at the moment, but it turns out to be the key that unlocks someone else's access to your historical moment.
Thank you. Oh, just one quick question. If we wanted to have this film, will this be for sale for people to buy or get a DVD of, or?
No comment. Yes, it will be coming to theaters in North America and to home video. I was given the release to be able to share that, thanks to the partners at Janus Films and Criterion Collection.
Hi, good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for presenting Will. I am a child from the 70s, 80s, and I remember that Just Say No that our First Lady at the time, Miss Reagan, had actually coined. But when I looked at the time frame, because I was like, the timeline, I said, wait a minute, this film came out in 81. So Miss Jessie was a pioneer for that Just Say No, because that slogan didn't come out until 82, possibly. There was some connection between the two. But my question to the panel would be, what kind of direct contact did Miss Jessie have with our filmmakers known as Spike Lee, who also came from New York, Harlem? Do we know if he utilized her expertise? Because looking at the camera shots, as well as your dad, looking at the camera shots, they were definitely before that time. I mean, going high up, you would think we were in a drone or something. And just look at the aerial shots and the movement with the characters as they were coming towards us. We're going backwards with the camera. Did she get a chance to work with Spike Lee or maybe other Black filmmakers?
So she never got a chance to work with Spike Lee, but she did showcase one of Spike Lee's films. She showcased all of his films that came out that weren't big studio films, that he did use her cinema, but she never worked with him per se. I don't recall.
No, so that's a wonderful question. When we look at that, 20 West was that theater that we shared about earlier, was a family cinema, and she showed every one of his films up until She's Gotta Have It, and she said that night was the first night she had to hand out napkins to all of the parents to hold in front of the kids' faces for that particular film. But what we do know is when you look, the Black film community is small, it is tight-knit. So we have Ernest Dickerson, who's a peer of hers, who was the director of photography for most of Spike Lee's films. We have all of them in community, and again, sharing that film. Before Spike Lee was Spike Lee, we had Spike Lee at 20 West, screening at 20 West.
Thank you so much as well for being here and for showing that film. I have two questions. One is kind of just personal because I'm really interested in Loretta Devine's role in the film, and then just because you're here, your involvement, if you had any contact with her still. I haven't heard her talk about this, her involvement in the film, but I would love to hear your experience in working with her and if you have any contact. And then the second question would be, I was going to ask about the public perception around little brother passing away. But I know now that it was more community perception because it was shown at 20 West. And I kind of think back to when I first saw Requiem for a Dream. And I was born in '89. I was also in film and such when I was in college. So that was jarring for me. So I'm wondering, what was the community perception to seeing a child pass away in that manner, if there was any?
So there wasn't really any. I think she wanted that part in the movie so that people can understand that there could be an ending part, that we do have to save our kids. And we do have to take the time to embrace them and save them from the street. I think that was her whole goal about that. Loretta Devine, when I worked with her, she wasn't Loretta Devine. She was an up-and-coming actress. And she did more theater than she did. Will was her first role, but yeah, Will was her first movie role per se. So I can't really give an intake on her because I didn't see her in that light. She was just an up-and-coming actress.
Can I just say too about the ending of or the scene, little brother dying? Keeping in mind that this is a film that was made in 78-ish, would you say, right? Coming at the end of the 1970s, there's lots of films where young people are doing drugs, ODing. It feels to me like this is also a film that it feels striking to us in this moment, and also even, growing up in the 80s and the 90s, but coming at the end of the 70s, I don't think that this would stand out as being particularly exceptional in terms of the death of a child. And I can't remember which Pam Grier film it is, if it's Friday Foster or Coffee, but literally her motivation to go take down the drug dealers is that her little sister ODs. And so I think this is what it taps on, is this larger kind of concern within Black film in the 1970s about the ways that drugs are ravaging the country, which we see in something like Superfly, for instance.
And people were functional addicts. People had jobs, they had careers, they were functional addicts. And if you take Little Brother, he was functional until somebody else took it more into a deeper thing.
I want to thank the audience for these wonderful questions. Unfortunately, I must wrap up, but I cannot do so without giving another round of applause to our panelists and for the film Will. So thank you all. Please look out for the news. I'm sure Janice will be releasing the news soon that the film is going to make a tour. And yes, thank you all so much for coming, and stay well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.